Why do worldly people or people of not of the Jehovah Witness faith, and I'm given the description because I may have worldly people listening to this video and it's sort of directed towards them. Why do worldly people or people of not of the Jehovah Witness faith are ignorant towards the Jehovah Witness and their sort of way of being? Basically, in my opinion, it's just a numbers game, or just a sheer number, or the math between JW members and worldly people is one of the biggest reasons why there's such a big ignorance towards the Jehovah Witness organization and their members. After all, JWs, according to some numbers out there, average 8 million, 9 million members worldwide. Whereas, let's take Muslims for as an example. They're, 2 billion, I believe? They're one of the largest religions in the world, along with Christendom. So just a sheer number, Jehovah Witnesses are pretty much lost in the static. Especially when these other religions have their more radical offshoots like Al-Qaeda and let's say the Caliphate now, ISIS. I'm sure Christendom have their offshoots like the Branch Davidians, the Jones massacre or mass suicide back in the 70s. And of course, if it bleeds, it leads. Those are the bad press that gets pretty much, coverage on the media. I also believe stereotypes has a big hand to do with the ignorance of the populace in general towards the JWs. For instance, and I alluded to this in my Halloween edition video that I put on a few days ago or so, and it's the running dumb joke that everybody pretty much pins JWs with, and it's a stereotype that they just cannot shake, and that's the door-to-door ministry. Or for you worldly people, Saturday mornings you get that knock on the door of the JWs, and it's somewhat of a nuisance. I understand. That is one of the sort of the biggest hallmarks or biggest stereotypes associated with JWs when you mention JWs to a worldly person, is the door knocking requirement or their methods every Saturday morning or so. And of course, the majority of the public take that into a negative light. I think that it sort of takes away the bite of the JWs, or it's hard to pin down. I don't know how to put it into words, but it pretty much turns off worldly people right off the bat. Then in turn, the flip side of that coin, consequences of that householder turning away that JW away, and from the stories I've heard from the ex-JW community, a lot of times is very abrupt and rude, and sometimes even threatening. That in turn reinforces the JW members' indoctrinated sort of disdain for worldly people. That is proof right there. Every day, the negativity, the denial of taking publications and whatnot, or just downright being rude, reinforces the JW's distrust towards worldly people and feeds into their fear that everyone is persecuting the JWs, even though these days you guys are not even on the map when it comes to persecutions. I think the Muslim faith, the Islam has been since the beginning the number one target for Christendom. JWs, you're not even in the same map. So the ignorance of both parties, the JW and the worldly person, right from the get-go, is rooted in distrust and basic ignorance of both parties between each other. luckily we have the internet now and social media that gives, more insight into both groups. Worldly, of course, it's out in the open, but JWs being a bit more secretive with their true sort of doctrines and stuff like that, and not the version that they portray to the world, which is very watered down, to say the least. Both parties are when they interface like that, where the JW makes the first move for contact with a worldly person, only to convert them, it starts off negative because of the stereotypes and just the ignorance of both cultures. And I consider the JW as a culture. Don't know the true Webster dictionary definition of the word, but they have their own ways, their own traditions. And it's just the first example, the first sort of everyday example that happens, like I said, every day. Then there's another aspect of the JW sounds familiar, especially during that first interactions with a JW. It's Christendom. They veil themselves in a veil of Christendom in the start. They are Bible readers. They believe in Jesus and all that. In the beginning, in a language that worldly people would understand, if that worldly person follows the King James version of the Bible, or whatever denomination that they are, whether it be Catholic, Lutheran, and all those other denominations. The JW speak in the beginning sounds familiar. And again, I'm going to bring in the numbers game. There's just too many denominations and offshoots of Christianity out there. Last I've heard, it was 35,000 denominations of the Christian faith, which JWs and not Scientology, but Mormons are sort of lumped into. Then again, the JWs are lost in the static. They're there right underneath the main wave of modern day Christianity. So they show up at your door. They already have their rule book on how to handle worldly people, or how to talk to them to where they're not scared away right off the bat. And it sounds familiar. And this is where I'm at fault here, or sort of unsuspected this particular group, is that, when I met my wife and everything, of course we talked, we're buddies, and she mentioned her faith and everything. It all sounded familiar. And I am of no faith. I am an agnostic, so I heard, the usual spiel, and I sort of shut it down. I was like, okay, I really don't want to hear no more of this. I already know it. Not interested. Was not interested in the Christendom part of it, or I didn't let myself go any further of what she was trying to say, or her JW members when they came around to visit or whatever, because once she went back to the faith, she got backup from her JW friends, and they come over and try to strike up a dialogue with me about reading and this and that, and I just won't have nothing to do with it, because I am generally not interested. It's not for me, and I made it perfectly clear, and I'm very stubborn about it. So, like I said before, the JW organization is really good about flying underneath the radar, especially with their isolationist policies towards the world in general, and keeping their members away from the world, and not letting the world be too close unless you're interested in becoming one of the JWs. But in my case, like I said, everything looked familiar. It was Christendom. It was a Christian church, and according to me, and also I was in the armed services, so I truly believe in protecting people's civil liberties, civil rights, and being that spear point of defense against any forces out there that puts that in danger. So that's somewhat indoctrination on my part as far as a worldly person, but it's a honorable sort of indoctrination, and a good, in my opinion, stance to have towards injustice. And all of this, in the bottom line, this I wouldn't say apostasy because I'm not a member to begin with, but this resistance to the JW organization is rooted in justice from a vast number of levels in this organization. I mean, it just goes against the common human civil rights that they inherently have. So that is pretty much where I'm coming from, and of course I'm deeply involved because of my wife's involvement with the JW organization from birth. She's born into it. So overall, in my opinion, I don't think the world in general, non-JWs, don't care about the JWs or laughs at them. I don't think they laughed at them. I mean, it's just the ignorant people out there do. But overall, the world population in general, attitudes towards the JWs are mainly out of ignorance. They don't know the nuts and bolts of the organization, me included. Even though I've been married to my wife a good 15 plus years, and I was knee deep in their, lifestyle, not practicing it, but separate, equal but separate from them, if that makes any sense. A big part of my own ignorance, I think, too, is, what we mentioned before, and it all sounded familiar.
Hello.
Hello, miss. How you doing? Nothing? Okay. That's my daughter here. I'm going to have to stop here for a minute. That I was protecting or contributing to the protection of an organization that was taking away civil liberties from their members. That's pretty much the bottom line of what I see and what I'm watching my wife go through with her denial of civil liberties and freedom, if you will. So from the beginning, from previous videos that I mentioned so far or that I've made, there were little, I would say, warnings, red flag warnings that kind of perked up my ears towards the organization, and I disagreed with their whole policy from the get-go, especially their shunning. And of course I have concerns about their pedophile handling and their lack of leadership in that department. But that's another stereotype. Well, not really. Scratch that. But my sort of worldly awakening, if there is such a thing, more so of an awakening than just a regular person listening to a JW and right off the bat dismissing it. It took me a while because I was with my wife and I met all her friends, and all their friends they're good people, and I could see that. I just wasn't in the JW fold where they have that sort of control within that particular setting, social setting, if that makes sense to you. But my awakening came where my wife and I, we first started off living in liberal cities, liberal attitude cities. So the people our age in those cities, my wife's and I, we would hang out. I would actually socialize, not get too close, and they won't let me get too close either, though I was pretty much aloof about the whole thing. I put a pretty high wall when it comes to me socializing. You have to prove yourself before I kind of let you into my little world. So I didn't let much people get into my little world here. The story is in these liberal cities, my wife's friends, they go out socializing, and it was pretty normal. We all went and drank and danced and went to clubs, and it looked and sounded familiar. It's not until we moved into a more conservative area that I seen the conservative control, the member control, sort of reveal itself, especially when the in-laws moved in close proximity to us. And those two, my in-laws, is another story in itself, and it's not very good. There is a thing such as social climbing, and these two are social climbers in the JW hierarchy. And I will get into details into that in later videos. But them being around them spreading false gossip against my wife, which has happened, yeah, causing division. I think you guys know where that comes from. They're masters of it. But anyway, I'm getting off point here. That is when I started to see the vast discrepancies of the JW's utopian lifestyle and the dark inner lining of what they were all about. And it wasn't until, well, yeah, we have children and they're involved, and that's another. I'm opening up all these cans of worms when it comes to the JW organization, and it affects every single aspect of your life, even this particular worldly person that you're listening to right now. And because my voice is disguised, should give you an indication of power, the subtle power and persuasions that the JW organization have against families. Someone like me shouldn't hide like the way I am hiding now. And the reason why I'm hiding is the JW organization at this point has a stranglehold on my family. That is the bottom line. They have a stranglehold. And I have to walk on eggshells so this whole family unit that I have, and it's a strong one, doesn't fall apart. Because if I make one false move, I would lose it all, and my wife will be lost to the JW organization. I think she is. She's born into it, and she will not be able to wake up by me telling her anything. Nobody can tell her nothing. She has to find these facts out for herself, naturally. You cannot deprogram a JW member. But again, I'm going off into other tangents. That's how much of a stranglehold they have on families out there, even unevenly yoked families. I'm glad to say that, yes, I am an anchor to the part of the uneven yoke, and I am the person that's keeping the family steady in these troubled waters. Very poetic. I'm usually not like this, but I'm running out of ideas, and I'm shooting off the hip here like I always do on these videos. But more details to come, and hopefully maybe this will be somewhat of a little insight to worldly people out there. If you have contact with a JW, a Jehovah Witness out there, whether it be romantically or just curious about their lifestyle. These videos really make a difference. Not mine in particular, but I would only listen to the ex-JW community videos out there because they are living it. They know the inner workings of the organization. They could simply describe what's going on, and just the experiences of what happened to them is facts that goes along with the JWs. Okay, I'll stop it right here.